Welcome to Stocks to Watch, a series filled with exciting, informative, and innovative stories from company executives globally. I'm Ashley Berry, and we're welcoming David Williams, Executive Chairman of Mount Isa Minerals, a company dedicated to exploration excellence in an Australia region with a focus on a range of base and precious metals and other minerals, including copper, gold, lead, silver, and others. Mount Isa Minerals, in fact, expects to list its prospectus and application on the Australian Stock Exchange in the coming weeks. Very exciting. David, welcome.
Thank you, Ashley. And it is exciting, but always a pleasure to talk to you.
Absolutely. So for our viewers unfamiliar with the company, perhaps you can provide a brief overview of Mount Isa, its current management team, and its distinctive capabilities.
Yeah, look, it's been around since about 2015, 2016 in one form or the other. And essentially what it has is a package of 8 exploration licenses aggregating about 345 square kilometres, but they sit on the western boundary of the Australia's second largest copper mine, the Mount Isa mine, that's currently owned by Glencore. And this has been producing copper, lead, and zinc, but particularly copper, for nearly 100 years. So, we're right in the right location as far as the source of the mineral is concerned. Our focus is on copper. And we know that there are other minerals there, including, for example, a small uranium resource. But our focus is on copper, which we see as becoming a very important critical mineral as we go forward and move towards the net zero targets that have been set.
Fantastic. So, David, if we could explore the Mount Isa project in more detail, what really makes it and its specific location appealing? What do you perceive as its true potential, and what drove you to invest in it and prioritize in this property specifically?
Yeah, look, it's like I feel sometimes sounding like a real estate agent. It's location, location, location. We all know how much harder it has become to develop new mines. Just the approval process is huge. The environmental hurdles you have to jump over, let alone the infrastructure, power, transport, people. Now, Mount Isa is a town that's almost in the centre of Australia, but it's been going since, as I said earlier, for 90 to 100 years. It's starting to produce power and send power back the other way towards the eastern seaboard. It's got a train line. It's got a major highway all the way through to Townsville as a major port. People have been living there. It's a fully fledged town. But importantly, as I've mentioned before, it's got an existing mine. Now, a little bit in the news recently, we'll come back to that, no doubt, but it is a mine that has primarily been focused on copper. It's starting to shift more of its focus to lead and zinc. It doesn't have the resources to continue on at the level that it has continued. So it's hungry for resources. It's looking for further copper to keep going. Yes, you can shut down or slow production by going down to turning one of the trains off and just running one train. But even that train, which is a multi-commodity train, doesn't have sufficient resource to feed it. And of course, then you start looking at the economics of, well, if I'm not fully utilising it, I'm not getting the best return on capital, et cetera, et cetera. So we've always felt that there is a need for resource. And our area is one that people have tended to not be as interested in, because the old geological model was that the copper and the nature of the style of the copper in the Mount Isa mine deposit, you don't see in the western side. And that's absolutely right. It is a different style. It comes from the same source. Surprise, surprise, we're next door, but we're on the other side of the major Mount Isa fault. And you therefore see one style and one geological event on the eastern side, but then you've seen different geological events that have caused the passage of the mineralisation going west. to come out in a different form. And it is more of an IOCG style where we're looking, and less of a sedimentary deposit style, which is what you see with the Mount Isa deposit. And again, what's a useful illustration on it is, as I mentioned earlier, there is uranium and there's repeated uranium, and there is a small 3 million pound resource of uranium. What do you see in a place like Olympic Dam? It's a major copper mine, but it's also a major uranium producer. So you're starting to see similarities with different styles. And if you step back and look at it with fresh eyes, you take all that data, and there's a massive geophysical database that's been produced over the years, limited drilling. But if you step back and you look at it with a systems approach and say, well, what do we think has gone on from a systems approach? You come up with a different equation. Now, those are the things that attract copper. Next door to a mine that needs resources, so I don't have to worry about mining it. Good infrastructure surrounding it, a very large exploration database that really hasn't been interrogated in the proper way. We've identified 13 walk-up targets already, and you see malachite, you see copper expressions on the surface, ticking those boxes.
And I might add, and you mentioned this about the port, it being a prime location because you have a railway that goes right through that. It really can't get much better than that, David. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit on the surveys conducted for this project specifically, and what insights have they provided about its current status and potential?
Yeah, look, so a lot of work was done by Xstrata as far as exploration is concerned. It's always a funny thing in large companies. I've seen this with oil and gas companies, and you see it with mining companies that can be very risk averse, particularly when it comes to exploration. And it can be very hard for the exploration geologists to get large dollars on a whole new idea exploration play. What's relatively cheap and easy to get is geophysics, gravity, magnetics, etc. And what we've seen is a lot of money has been expended on geophysics. So it's an extensive database which helps you build up that picture beneath the surface. Now, like all geophysics, until you put a hole in it, you don't know whether exactly it's there. So starting point, there's a massive amount of geophysical data, which means that we don't need to do a lot of that work. 250,000 soil and rock chip samples have been collected. So you've got a very large database, particularly on the key areas as far as what you're seeing on the surface. Just to put it into context, the top 10 of those rock chip samples range between 10% and 32% copper. So rock chips are going to be more concentrated, but you're really sort of seeing some strong evidence on it. We were driving around the tracks yesterday, and we'd stopped the vehicle in the middle of one of the roads that had been graded recently for us. And there was some pegmatite sticking up in the middle of the road that with green on it, with the malachite on it. So we weren't aware that was there before. So you know it's there because of what you're seeing on the surface. There was a lot of drilling done in relation to the uranium, 24,000 metres of RC and about 1,700 metres of the diamond. Well, we've managed to find the diamond drilling. But it was only assayed for uranium, wasn't assayed for the other elements. So we've already got samples prepared that we can go off and get the full suite of elements assayed to see what else we're seeing, and start to build up a map of these pathfinder elements and develop some of these geochemical models and start overlaying them, which will help us sort of vector in. So massive amount of preliminary data helped us identify the targets, and now we're ready to go. And we've got approvals, both land access and regulatory approvals. So as soon as we've completed the IPO, we'll be hitting the ground with drilling rigs.
Fantastic. We understand you're getting ready to uplist. Maybe you can just drill down a little bit, no pun intended, but more on the timeline for our viewers as far as what they can expect.
Yeah, look, so we're pretty ready to go as far as finalisation of the prospectus is concerned. I mean, one of the key aspects of that is the audited accounts for the year ended 30th of June 2023. They're just finalising at the moment. So we think we'll be in pretty good shape by the end of this month, early November. With the prospectus ready to go. We've been talking to the ASX and explaining where we're at with them. We don't envisage any major issues there. So at the moment, our target is to get that in by the end of the prospectus by the end of this month, early November. And away we go. But, you start to get into that dead time as far as the market is concerned here in Australia. Australians, we love our summer holidays. And, there's cricket on. Oh, not that you guys would understand that, but a bit of cricket
It's
on.
fun to think about.
Going to be a cricket World Cup in the US soon, so it's all happening. So look, depending upon how that's going and the market, we might push it out into February, March, but at the moment our target is October, November, and with the aim of being listed before the end of this calendar year.
Well, listen, all great news coming out of your company. Unfortunately, right now, Mount Isa kind of in the spotlight for some negative news about the closure of mines, the loss of jobs. Perhaps you can help provide more information about this news specifically that's coming out of there, because you had mentioned it earlier, and what it means for your company.
Yeah, look, let's talk about timing. I was talking about location before, but timing. I get off the plane in Mount Isa on Wednesday morning of this week just to be greeted by the announcement from Glencore that they were planning to stop the copper concentrate line in the second half of 2025 and gradually reduce some of the other lines. Largely, as I was saying before, and as we had identified, of having insufficient resources. Now, the important thing about this is they haven't said they are shutting the Mount Isa mine in total. They've said they're reducing and changing the operations. Yes, they're shutting that specific copper concentrator, but they're continuing on the other line, which is a multi-commodity line. And again, you'll see that they have insufficient resources for that. So to me, I'm not fazed by it all, as I've said. In fact, I think it just strengthens our position. This strengthens our case. It strengthens our argument that it needs more resources. You could not build that infrastructure again in Australia. It will not shut. It will continue on. What we and other companies in the region need to do is to find those additional resources. Who is best placed? We are. We're next door. So, again, we're in that prime seat and we know it's there and we can pass it on. So, look, it's people's immediate reaction, Glencore shutting the mine. They're not shutting the mine. They're shutting parts of the mine, they're scaling it down, they're looking for resources. So to me, all positive. State governments very strong and focused on it. And again, we therefore know that the government's going to be keen for us to push forward. But the real thing, I think, is a more global thing. And it's the demand or the need for copper to get to those 2050 zero emission targets. There's a lot of commentary starting to come out about it. And I think most people sit there and think, copper's been around forever, there's loads of copper and we don't need to worry about copper. Why then are the big companies like BHP suddenly running prime time television advertisements branding copper, talking about copper? Why are companies like BHP running their BHP Explore program with a focus on copper? Why are Rio Tinto talking about copper? One of the more conservative figures that I've seen is that the total amount of copper that's been mined from this planet of ours since time as records have been kept is about 700 million tonnes. How much copper is needed between now and 2050 in order to achieve those targets? 1.4 billion tonnes, twice what we've already extracted from this earth in the last 90 to 100 years. That's massive. And it's a bulk commodity. Everything you need copper. You can look at the numbers, the amount of copper that goes into a solar panel compared to traditional methods of supply. As I was saying earlier, think about it. If you're not going to use natural gas to provide your heating and your hot water in a house, where are you going to get your energy? Well, okay, it's going to be electricity. We can't run electricity down gas pipelines in the under the ground. You've got to bring in copper wires. The solar farms, the wind farms, they're not built where there's existing generation. So now you've got to, even apart from the copper wire between the various panels and the windmills, you've got to transport the electricity. You then got to transport the electricity from those new locations into the grid. What do you need for that? You need copper, and you need a lot of copper. So I think people are just beginning to come to grips with that. Now, everyone's been focused on lithium and see the lithium batteries blow up and what have you. But what we need, and what we need in large quantities, is copper. And I think you're going to see a lot of pressure. You're seeing production declining in Chile. Glencore announcing reduction of production out of Mount Isa. It's Australia's second largest copper producer. Now, these are just all illustrations of the problem we're facing. And you can't magically wave a wand and it suddenly jumps out of the ground into a copper concentrate. It takes time. And you need to be able to use existing infrastructure, but you need to be able to find it near it, because if it's a long way away, the transport just kills the economics.
David, always appreciate the insights, the foresight, and of course, very excited as you get ready to uplist. I'm sure potential investors will be watching closely. David Williams, Executive Chairman of Mount Isa Minerals. Thank you as always for your time, and we look forward to sharing more with our audience on Stocks to Watch.
Thanks, Ashley.